And tonight, 12 juicy contracts to one architect is causing a storm as the petitioner asks President Akufo-Addo to intervene, citing breach of procurement processes. We'll hear from the Ghana Institute of Architects, which is backing the claims by this petitioner.
Ghanaian architects here must be given the opportunity to participate in these competitions. It is only fair. We don't see how we can just open our borders and allow, almost something that seems to be soul sourcing to continue.
That's coming up here on Top Story, brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Gassim cements the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. And Nationwide Medical Health Insurance, your healthcare family. And tonight, 12 projects, including the proposed parliamentary chamber and Marine Drive master planning, awarded to Sir David Ajay, principal architect for Ajay and Associate, is causing a storm among architects. A petition to the president is, among others, pointing to procurement breaches, the flouting of the Ghana Architects Decree, and unfair playing field. The petitioner claims due process was not followed in the award of those contracts, some of which he claims are already ongoing. My colleague Daniel Dazi has a copy of the petition and joins me in the studio with more on this. Daniel, first take us through the 12 contracts mentioned in this petition.
Two of those projects in here, MFR, are well known. The first one is the National Cathedral. The second one is the new Parliamentary Chamber. With both of these contracts, we know that David Ajay of Ajay and Associates have been associated with them. However, with the 10 other contracts, we are yet to independently verify if all of these have David Ajay and Associates associated with them, or if they are even government contracts in some cases. But I'll take you through them.
Okay.
Marine Drive Master Planning, International Cancer Center for Children. With this one, for instance, we don't know if it's government funded in the first place. The Trade Fair Center redesign, GNPC Accra Head Office, GNPC Takrady Office Complex, New News Office Complex for the Bank of Ghana, CD House 2, Airport City 2 design, and this Airport City 2 is actually Energy City, proposed Energy City, details of which I'll bring you very, very shortly. And there's also the Ochehene Palace design. Again, we don't know if this is a government-funded project. And the new railway terminal design and redevelopment and expansion of the Ghana Embassy in the U.S.
And this petitioner is architect Dr. Eko Sam of the Design Associate Development Consortium. Amongst others, he raises a number of concerns, though. But let's start with what exactly are his concerns?
The first concern that he raises, and I'm going to quote from the letter that he wrote to the office of the president. He says, even where we have bidded alongside this government preferred architect and won on merit, a decision is taken to give the project to this architect. And here he's accusing government of awarding these projects to David Ajay and Associates when the man has not won. He also goes on to say that Sir David Ajay, who is a principal architect of Ajay and Associates, to the best of our knowledge, is not licensed or registered to carry on the profession of an architect under the Architects Decree 1968 NLCD 357 as amended. He's not a member of the Ghana Institute of Architects. Furthermore, neither he himself nor Ajay and Associates have been registered by the Architects Registration Council pursuant to Architects Decree NLCD 357 as amended. He says there has been a total and absolute disregard and non-adherence to principles of transparency, fairness, equity, and laws governing the procurement of professional services by statutory companies and bodies. He also goes on to say that all the statutory institutions listed have failed to adhere to the Public Procurement Act 2003 Act 663. I must say that there are no statutory institutions listed here. If petition. You want to, unless of course you want to count those listed in title of project as a statutory institution. And so it goes on to say, interestingly, that the independence, fairness, and the neutrality of the decision makers and advisors on projects have been compromised throwing into doubt the soundness of their decision. And again, he says it's public knowledge that AJ and Associates have formally been part of discussions held by the various statutory bodies and companies on the aforementioned project to the exclusion of other firms.
So we'll talk about the law, though, but he mentioned somewhere in here also interestingly that, secondly, the said David Ajayi, not being ordinarily resident in Ghana, is disqualified from being registered as an architect licensed to practice in Ghana under the Architect's Decree NRCD 357 as amended, and goes on also to say that in spite of the foregoing, all the statutory institutions listed above have failed to adhere to the Public Procurement Act 2003 as amended by the Public Procurement Amendment Act 2016, Act 915. This act was intended to sanitize the mode of procurement of goods and services, an intendment carried further by you through the establishment of a Ministry of Procurement. Now, he has some claims or some demands that he wants the president to work on. We'll get to it shortly, but since he's mentioning issues of law, you've been checking the laws that govern architects in the country. What does it say?
I have with me the very law, MFA, that Architect Dr. Ekosam refers to. That's the NLCD 357, the Architects Act or the Architect's Decree. I'll take you straight to Section 11. It says, no person shall be registered as an architect unless he has become a resident in Ghana. He become resident in Ghana, attained the age of 21 years, and has paid the prescribed fees, or if he has been, well, then he goes on to say, if he has been adjudged by a court of competent jurisdiction to be of unsound mind or convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction, whether in Ghana or elsewhere, if any offense involving fraud or dishonesty, or if having been adjudged an insolvent or bankrupt has not been granted by a court of competent jurisdiction a certificate to the effects that his insolvency or bankruptcy has risen wholly or partly from unavoidable losses or misfortunes. Now, section 2 of that section says, subsection 2 of that section says, notwithstanding anything in this paragraph, a non-resident, being otherwise qualified, may make a special application for temporary registration for the purposes of executing a specific project. Now, I'm going to take you all the way down to section 22, where it's captioned architects that have annual practicing certificates. Subsection 1 says, no registered architect shall be entitled to practice as an architect unless he is a holder of an annual practicing certificate, which is for the time being in force. A practicing certificate shall be issued by the council upon application to by a registered architect and upon payment of the prescribed annual fee. Right. So in these two laws I have mentioned, in these two sections, I have mentioned that first of all, you cannot practice as an architect until you have registered with the council through the Institution of Architects, and also you cannot practice even if you after you have registered as an architect if you don't have the practicing certificate. The annual.
So we have a copy of the Architects Registration Council members in good standing as at April 2018, 30th April 2018, and that's one of the issues that you're making reference to. That, like at least from the decree that you've read, if it's a foreign company, it ought to have been registered with the Architects Registration Council. And from this is published in the Daily Graphic that I have a copy here. And from the list that we have, at least the foreign one, which is the last one that we have, we don't have. It just has one company, Ajayi and Associates, is not mentioned there, is it?
No, it's not. It's also interesting, really, to see that in the caption for this list is written here that it's a punishable offense under the Architects Act 1969, which is what I just read. For a person working or carrying on a business in Ghana and not being an architect registered under the Act to use or cause to use or permits to be used in connection with his name under which he carries on the work or business, the word architect, architecture or architectural, or any words, initials, or abbreviation of words intended to cause or which may reasonably cause a person to believe that the person using the name is an architect. It goes on to even specify roadside signage and signage on buildings.
We'll talk to a technical person shortly, but just before I let you off, Daniel, he speaks specifically to the Parliamentary Chamber Design competition. Also in that, attached to it is a letter correspondence between himself and Parliament on this matter. What exactly is his concern regarding that?
So I have a letter here that he wrote to the Registrar, Architects Registration Council of Ghana, 39 Road Ridge, and it goes on to give the address there. Dear Madam, architectural design competition for the proposed new chamber complex for Parliament of Ghana, declaration of results, and closure of competition. Now, a bit of background to this is it's the Architects Registration Council of Ghana which held the design competition, from what sources tell us. And this morning, the Honorary Secretary of the Institution of Architects, Augustus Richardson, confirmed this when he was speaking to us on the Super Morning Show.
We'll get to hear that shortly.
Right. So this is like a response to the Architects Registration Council. He says, we undoubtedly and without any hesitation consider the so-called competition in connection with the above a complete hoax and a means to normalize, recognize, justify, conclude, and give blessing to a decision that has been taken before the competition. And he puts competition in quote. He said such a result was highly anticipated. And the reason is that in a meeting with the client then being the Architects Registration Council, His Right Honourable, the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Aaron Michael Quay, the principal client, had informed us categorically that a decision had already been taken to award the consultancy to Sir David Ajay Associates. So here he alleges clearly, and I think it's in black and white, that he believes that they had already decided to award it to Sir David Ajay before the competition. And he goes on to say that the identity, he goes on to say that there was an overwhelming praise of our work, referring to his work as architect Ekosam. There was overwhelming praise of our work during our presentations, to the amazement of the parliamentary panel, as it was inquired from us whether the concepts were done in Ghana. We also request, so he went on to say, we therefore on principle and logic decline the payment of 32,000 Ghana cedis competition award and hereby return the check. We also request a detailed report of our actual scores under the criteria for awarding the marks.
Okay. Well, so that's the petitioner and his concerns raising that petition sent to the presidency. We're yet to get confirmation from the presidency whether that has been done because it's proved futile, but we're still trying to see whether the president has received this and what his reaction will be officially to this and what will be done subsequently. But we've been joined on the phone by the president of the Ghana Institute of Architects, Mr. Richard Ni Dade. We're grateful for your time here on Top Story. I'd first want you to take us through whom you consider as a member in good standing in terms of who an architect is.
Thank you very much, MFR. The qualification to be a member is clearly stated in Act 357. It's very clear. I believe your colleague has read it, but maybe just for clarity, I will go over it again. One, you should have passed the qualifying examinations in the courses prescribed or approved by the board under this act. And this, again, the ARC board we're talking about. And has completed practical training of the description and for the period prescribed by the board. The two, or B, is a person who has passed the qualifying examination of a society or institute of architects by whatever name called, approved by the board as an association of equivalent status of the institute. And C states that is a person who was a member of the Ghana Institute of Architects immediately before the commencement of this act. This is clear. These are persons who qualify. Then it says that in section 11, it says a person shall not be registered as an architect unless that person is resident in the Republic, has attained the age of 21 years, and has paid the prescribed fees. And it just goes on and on. So these are the requirements for being a member.
Okay.
Now, you need to have applied to the institute. The institute needs to have approved your application. They should have paid the prescribed fees, which will entitle you to getting a certificate, it will entitle you to getting the architect's pin and all that before you proceed to the registration council and then do your final registration. So that is it.
So from your books, though, you are the president of the Ghana Institute of Architects. I would want to find out about David Ajay and Associates, because there's a petition here which you've been copied as well. Yes. At least Augustus confirms that you've seen that petition. I would want to find out what's the standing of David Ajay and Associates regarding your association.
Okay. Right. Specifically, David Ajay, as an individual, applied for membership. Right. In April 18th last year, he was requested to come and pay. He was given an invoice to pay and then go through the registration procedure so that he would become a member. This has not been done to date. I'd also like here to make a distinction between Sir David Ajay and then David Ajay and Associates. They are separate entities. Now, Sir David Ajay and Associates has not even applied and been given any response to membership. They posted an application sometime in April last year, but they have not followed up. So the firm Ajay and Associates is not on the GIA list. They've not been given anything. On the contrary, we find that it is on the ARC list of this year, which is an anomaly because it was not on last year's list. I'm saying this because when the competition started in last year, 2018, he should have been eligible in 2018 to take part in the competition. But as per graphic publication of 30th April last year, he was not on the list. You can check 30th April 2018. He's not even on the temporary register.
And that we have mentioned. But how then do you explain how the Architects Registration Council awarded the Parliamentary Chamber contract to the Sir David Ajay?
Clearly, this is due to there was a lack of a board. The board was not there, so the board couldn't carry out its supervisory activities. Clearly, this was what happened. If the board had been in place, and as we've been stressing over and over again, because of the supervisory duties carried out by the board, all these things would be done as required by law. But there was no board in place. So that is how come this happened. There's no board in place. And as we said, there's still no board in place.
But then if there's no board in place and we have an old board in place and that board endorses Sir David Ajay and gives him such a contract, why are we questioning it?
No. There has not been a board for 5 years. Let's understand. There's not been a board for 5 years. So there was no board which has endorsed him. What I said was the Ghana Institute of Architects, now which is separate from the board. The Ghana Institute of Architects gave him registration but said, come and pay, satisfy these administrative procedures, and then you become a member. He has not done that to date.
So then, which entity in particular recommended the 3 architects that Parliament got, and out of the 3 chose one?
It's a parliamentary, I think it's parliamentary board, or what do you call it? Parliamentary services. It's a parliamentary services, yeah. They came out with a short list.
Of course, they came out with a short list, but we're told that recommendation came from the Architects Registration Council.
Which recommendation came from the architects?
The three architects that the Parliamentary Services Board were working with. That recommendation came from the Architect Registration Council. That's what we are hearing. It
was the Parliamentary Services that gave these 3 names to the Architects Registration Council. It came from them. The 3 names.
But it's the same registration council that you're talking that are not in existence that they sent these 3 names to for recommendation, and then they chose Sir David Ajay.
No. You know, let me explain. There are a few fine details that we have to understand. We have the Architects Registration Council, which is the secretariat. Now, this council is to be supervised by a board. Now, the board is not in place, but then the secretariat is still working, right? Now, it is this council, right, which is working without the governing body that was dealing with the parliamentary services. You know, if you go to NLC Decree 357, the first one, establishment of the council, it says there is established in accordance with this act an Architects Registration Council to perform the functions assigned to it by this act. Then it goes on to say that there shall be a governing body. It has defined who the members of the governing body are. That is clear. There are a number of architects, persons nominated by the Faculty of Architecture, person nominated by the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, and so on. It's all there, including a legal advisor from the Attorney General. Now, we are seeing that this governing board was not in place and is still not in place. But then the council, which for want of a better word you may refer to as a secretariat, is still working. So it is the secretariat, which we call the Architect Registration Council, which has been dealing with the parliamentary services.
So then, from all that we've said and reading the decree amongst others and what the petitioner is also saying, it looks like clearly something has gone wrong somewhere. What then is the Institute of Architects going to do about the situation?
Yes, as you are aware, we came out with a press statement last week, a press release, and we're asking the government to get this governing body in place as soon as practically possible. Once the body is in place, the supervisory duties that they have will come to play, and then we shall not have such infractions taking place. It is made up of 10 persons, right? And we expect that by end of July, this will be done. We're just some 2 weeks away. So once that is done, all these things will be looked at, and then we hope going downstream, these things will not reoccur.
The talk really for some is that it looks like architects or members of your association or Ghana Institute of Architects, it looks like you don't really have legitimate concerns. You are just worried that one person is getting all the juicy contracts. Maybe he has the best brains and all put together. That's how come he's getting all these juicy contracts. Up your game as well and get it too. That's the concern.
Okay. So let me respond very clearly. Our press release spoke specifically, made reference to the award for the second parliamentary chamber, right? And we stressed on the method used for giving the job out. It doesn't matter who the job went to. If it went to a Ghanaian architect who's here all his life, if it came to me, the Institute of Architects will still have an issue if the same procedure was used to appoint me. So it is a procedure that we keep on stressing on. It doesn't matter who got the job, but the procedure is wrong.
Very well.
Are you understanding us? The procedure is wrong.
Mm-hmm. That he was not a member in good standing at the time, yet the process has begun.
He was not, and he's still not, because he hasn't completed his process of registration. He hasn't completed it.
Okay. We're grateful for your time. We're yet to hear from Sir David Ajayi and Associates as a company and as an individual. We've made contact. We've tried to reach him for a comment on this. But as and when we're able to, we'll bring his side of the story as well. But as it stands now, we have not been able to get him. But all that we've seen, at least the members in good standing, according to the Registration Council, as at April 30, 2018, Sir David Ajayi nor David Ajayi and Associates were there. But we've checked with the Registrar General's Department, though, that company is registered as a Ghanaian company. But as to whether it's registered with the Architects, Ghana Institute of Architects, that we cannot verify, because the list that we have as at April 30, 2018, that name was not there. That's it for Top Story, though, brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Gassam Cement, the nation builder. Nationwide Health Insurance, your healthcare family. And of course, Gassam Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? I am MFA Apau. Newsnight comes up shortly. Do stay.